So in this segment, we're going to be talking about more than 40% of British exports have disappeared from European shelves since Brexit. So more than 40% of Britain's products previously exported to the EU have disappeared from European shelves since Brexit, new figures show. A trade economist trying to assess the effects of Brexit warned in research published that new bureaucracy was putting off exporters on a grand scale. So when we look at the scale of the checks, depending on the products, but generally there are checks on rules of origins, standards, customs checks. You might also face vet checks, depending on the products you're exporting, if they're certain animal products or agri-food products, etc. Now, these checks can be pretty expensive and add a further layer of cost. If you're a small exporter, you have no chance, especially if there are any mistakes. Your stuff can get sent back. If you have issues with cabotage, which makes haulage more expensive, combined with less groupage, you would be reluctant of putting your stuff in with other people's stuff, because if their stuff gets stuck at the border, so does yours. And the kicker is countries will ask for the documents to be translated into their native language. So it will have to be French in this context. French sucks. Biblioteca. The researchers from the Centre of Business Prosperity at Aston University found that small businesses were the least likely to be able to deal with the government's new red tape and would most likely give up selling abroad. And that's obviously a loss of money for the UK. We find that due to the UK-EU Trade and Cooperation Agreement, the UK has experienced a significant contraction of trading capacity in terms of the varieties of goods exported to the EU, the researchers write. Our estimates suggest that as many as 42% of the product varieties previously exported to the EU have disappeared during the 15 months following January 2021. Of course, the pandemic would play a part in that, but given the trade barriers that have been put up are really aggressive, I would probably put it down to that, I'll be honest. Those exporters would be a range of things, but the people most impacted for foodstuff would be British migrants or expats, but migrants would be the correct term, who can't live without custard creams and baked beans, and neither could I, to be fair. We argue that this decline has unfolded in three ways. A large number of exporters has ceased to export to the EU, the remaining exporters have streamlined their product lines, and fewer exporters are choosing to enter the EU market. This makes sense. Some would suspend trade altogether. Some might look at products which face less checks. You would look at which items are more profitable, so they would be worth worth the checks or worth going through the hassle. Under the terms of the Brexit deal, the EU British exporters will have to fill out reams of new paperwork. It's not new; it's for third countries. I get very pedantic about that, but and bureaucracy in order to be able to export to the continent. As a member of the EU, the UK was part of the single market and customs union and exempt from these requirements, enjoying privileged access to the European markets and vice versa. For a lot of these businesses, they would have no idea of how these checks work or who to contact for help, and even the ones that did figure it out are struggling. Dr. Shepotya, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that, co-author of the paper, said the product varieties that have disappeared are mostly those with low export value. The ones that profit from selling huge volumes are the ones struggling the most, especially the ones who are selling cream and milk. They have no chance. Last year, many British fishermen were the first to halt exports to the continent due to red tape, but they've been swiftly followed by others. One British brand to significantly slim down its offering was Marks & Spencer's, which last year announced it was closing 11 of its French stores. I've talked about Marks & Spencer's a lot, so I'm not going to go into detail about the issues they're facing, but the fact that they continue to have issues, it's hilarious at this point. The Federation of Small Businesses last year said 7 in 10 firms exporting to the EU have encountered problems, and almost 1 in 4 had suspended exports altogether. Given how many people small businesses employ, this is really bad news. It'll mean they'll cut production, which means they'll need less people, so more unemployed people. If the company had UK-based suppliers, they're going to sell less, which creates even more problems. Professor June Du, who also authored the paper, said it was important for the problems caused by the government's policy to be openly acknowledged and discussed. Big oof there. Until this was the case, we won't see any necessary actions being taken, she said. This is important. As much as the experts and the trade experts on Twitter can raise awareness, nothing much will change. The government already know that these problems exist. They're not hidden, but they won't acknowledge it. Labour seized on the findings, and Shadow Trade Minister Gareth Thomas, no idea who that is, said it was devastating to see small businesses hit the hardest by the policy. Labour said it would look for tweaks to the Brexit deal like mutual recognition of qualifications, though Starmer ruled out rejoining the single market, and obviously we know that can't happen, blah blah blah. Huge burn from Labour. Tweaks will help, but it won't be enough. Once these EU companies replace the UK ones, the game is over. These checks are incredibly prohibitive for trade, and the UK cannot replace lost EU exports with the rest of the world. Geography and border checks are issues, but Brexiteers still don't get that. The day Brexiteers understand geography, pigs will fly on that day. Obviously not into the EU because they'll face, border checks, but, pigs will fly in the UK, honestly, or in Great Britain, because if they go towards Northern Ireland, they'll face border checks. You get my point. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.